In this video, we're going to start out by talking about career options and jobs that are based on the web design skills that we'll learn in this course. So I'm going to open this site called dice.com, which is specifically for technology jobs. And I'm going to run a search in Miami for UX UI designer, because these are some of the job titles you might not yet be familiar with. And yet these are design jobs in the web field, in digital design. So if you scroll through these jobs, there are apparently 64 open right now. You'll get a sense for different job titles and different types of companies that are looking for these types of people. So for example, here is a front-end developer, and what kinds of skills do they want the person to have? Well, of course, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery, and you can read the job description for yourself. What kind of work would they have you doing? And what kind of experience do they want you to have? So even though this is not an entry-level job, you should be looking at job advertisements like this long before you graduate to get an idea for what kinds of skills you should be building up. Here's a description for a front-end UI UX developer, not designer, but developer. And what kind of skills do they want? They are looking for CSS, HTML, JavaScript and jQuery, and they also mention some of the things you'll find described in Robbins Chapter 1, such as wireframes, the kinds of things people expect to see in your portfolio. They expect to see you have completed projects in your portfolio, which you can develop during this class. And finally, here's a job description simply for a graphic designer, and they want that person to know CSS, HTML, and JavaScript, in addition to print materials. They, of course, also want you to do things online. They will want you to know several of the Adobe programs, right, as a graphic designer. But they have as an absolute requirement for a graphic designer working knowledge of CSS, HTML, and JavaScript. So those are skills you'll be learning in this course. So Robbins in Chapter 1 explains the differences between these different job titles, and she points out that there's a lot of overlap. Sometimes you're expected to have skills in more than one of these areas if you are a digital designer as your primary job. Now, the skills we'll learn in this course are, of course, applicable to many other kinds of jobs, but I listed these because you might not realize all the different kinds of things that digital design entails. And there are many sites that you can look at to get job descriptions that might be more suitable to the kind of job you see yourself looking for when you graduate. And I've given a list here. You should be able to search for web design, web development, coding skills at any of these job sites for communications careers. Note also, if you want to get a real design job, a graphic design job, you're going to need to acquire skills that are not covered in this course. And those include typography, layout, and color theory. We don't have time to go into the whole realm of design, so you'll have to find those skills somewhere else. Now, the last part I want to cover related to Robbins Chapter 1 is the difference between front-end, back-end, and full-stack development. And in talking about those, I want to talk about the actual technologies we're going to cover in this course. So this is a useful one-page diagram of the relationship among different skill sets, different technologies, and most important for you, perhaps the difference between the front end and the back end. We already talked about UX, user experience, and UI, user interface. We haven't really talked about information architecture, but you can look that up easily, and Robbins talks about it in chapter 1 a bit. But I really want to differentiate here between the front end and the back end. So the front end is what we will be covering in this course. No back end in this course. So the front end consists of 3 major technologies. HTML for the structure of the document. CSS for the presentation, the display, the way the document appears, the fonts, the color, the layout. And finally, JavaScript, which is for interaction, interactivity, and behavior. So your first task is really to separate these in your mind and recognize that each technology is used for a particular end in creating your web apps and websites. All of these take place in the browser, not on the server, in the browser, which is the client. The back end, on the other hand, requires the server. So people who are experts in the back end work with server technologies, particularly databases. So when you've got websites that require usernames and passwords to log in, when you've got things dealing with money like banking and shopping, those technologies require back-end skills, back-end protections for the clients, for the customers, and they take place, the programming takes place on the server. People who work in the back end often have some experience with front-end technologies. A full stack developer, full stack, combines both back-end and front-end. So I hope this has been a useful introduction to the fundamental concepts of web design and development, and you have an idea of where we're going to go from here.